Hey fellas, how you all doing? I'm back and back with a bang. Not really, I'm barely back. I just wasn't quite in the headspace to want to do these vlogs. I was also working on something that I think is going to blow your socks off. I hope to release it to the world in a month, give or take. I want to quickly talk about my process for this. So the way I want to do this in the ideal world is I determine the topic I want to talk about, I write about, well, either of those two actually. And I gather my notes from my mind and then do some research, compile this in a structure that makes the most sense depending on what I want to focus on, um, yeah, what I want to stress upon, etc. But what happens invariably is that when I try to create these notes, write down these notes, I write these in a prose form. Like I can't just write that short note, right? Let's say I'm talking about the implications of AGI in education, right? I can't just, for some reason, there's this, maybe it's a bug, maybe it's a feature, but there's this pattern in me which forces me to write everything in a prose form. And when you write these things in a prose form, even though you want to talk about just the idea instead of necessarily the way in which you have stated this in your notes, because you already done that, your mind is going to revert to those sequence of words instead of just using what might be more natural, where it's just you and the camera, right? Again, I think it's a process I've been getting better at it, so hopefully soon we'll get to that point where I've just got these pointers, and maybe in a few months I might not even need pointers, which obviously would be the ideal state. One quick note before we start, this one is riddled with a lot of my personal thoughts, and there's a reason for this, right? There are certain things where you can't really separate your predictions from from the personal thoughts, because the two are blended fundamentally, and this is one of those topics. Yeah, I think that's enough meta stuff for the moment. Let's just start right. And I'm going to talk about something that's just been on my mind, which has been troubling me, even plaguing me, if I can use that word, for some time. The future of startups, and especially startups as a vehicle for wealth creation. We're going to talk about startups in quite a few vlogs, but the future of startups in quite a few vlogs. So I want to focus more on the aspect of them as an engine of class hopping, economic class hopping, and as an engine of wealth creation. They are a peculiar vehicle. They they're an engine that can convert unique insights, unique experiences, and unrelenting work ethics into generational wealth, into freedom. Most of the point, external freedom, right? Because freedom can be of two kinds. One is the external kind, where you can affect changes in the world to mold it to your own desires and tastes, and one is internal, where you're in full control over your internal states of mind, and your mind is aligned to your, let's just call them your highest wishes and desires for who you want to be, right? And aligned or conscious self. Not to get too esoteric, but of those two freedoms, I want to focus more on the external part of things, where money tends to be one of those things, one of those currencies, which help people build up that external freedom, right? And I see, since this is all about to change, they are going to cease to exist as an engine of freedom creation, to use that as a term. As someone who's designing his life to be in lockstep with the future, I need to be able to see what the music is doing a day from today, a year from today, a month from today, a year from today, a decade from today. And as I'm standing here, the darkness looming around me outside, I'm afraid I didn't hear a thing. And that terrifies me on the one level where I'm so capable of feeling terrified. By the way, did you get the reference? Yes, one of the greatest symphonies in the history of the planet, in the history of the species, is coming close to its retirement. It's just going to have massive repercussions. It could be the end of capitalism very soon, and certainly of the kind that allowed people, for the first time in human history, to go from practically nothing to being able to have anything that they wanted. Pre-agriculture, wealth didn't matter much. You couldn't buy meaningful stuff beyond food, and there was only so much food that you would need. Post-agriculture, the classes were stagnant as the times were. Only post the printing press, and then accelerated rapidly by the Industrial Revolution, turbocharged by the IT Revolution, did knowledge capital and creative capital start generating an alpha for the possessors of these insights, knowledge, and capabilities. If you had something and the world wanted it, if you invented something and the world wanted it, it would be to pat to your door. This, being rewarded for bringing actual value to the world, was a genius model. And it wasn't invented by someone, it was invented almost, it emerged just because of our psychological makeup, where we are curious creatures and we want more. And the world is structured in a certain way that the way societies emerge, it would just capital would just accrue to people who generated more value, more wealth. That obviously hasn't been true in a lot of cases, and with a lot of cases there's been a lot of misallocation of capital. And again, this is obviously far more complex than I would want to get into in this conversation, where we're just sticking to one particular aspect of it. But more or less, your rise in the world is correlated to the value you generated in the world, especially in the last 100 years, especially in the last 50 and 20 years. It had become increasingly so. Unfortunately, that world is doing a lot of heavy lifting over here. This is all about to change. Our greatest asset is we can commoditize intelligence. And very soon, we'll have entities in our midst that can solve problems and generate insights faster and more, not just insights, solutions, actual full-fledged solutions, full-stack solutions, faster and more effectively than the top 10 minds of our species combined, both living and dead. This could happen in a year, or it could take 10. What's inevitable is happening. I don't want to drum on the obvious revolutionary, earth-shaking implications of positive implications of AGI. The reason I've devoted the next 20 years of my life and the last 3 years of my life to this endeavor is because AGI is going to be the single greatest invention in our history, but also comes with certain side effects and byproducts that might not be optimal for large classes. I don't know about large classes, but for some classes of society, some groups in society. I want to focus on one of those groups because in a way I can relate more to that group than most of the groups. In a way because I've thought about this group more than I've thought about almost any other group. And in a way because I am in that group more than I am in any other group. So, what does this mean? What could this lead to? As a knowledge worker, be it working for a FANG company or building your own startup or business, your value was in your general cognitive abilities, which we call intelligence, right? Insight gleaning, problem solving, knowledge assimilation, interpretation of the world, modeling the world, predicting the world, effectively creating new things, creating new knowledge. What happens when you have entities that can do all this and more for a fraction? And I mean a fraction of the cost. Yep, you guessed it right. Your smarts, your unique insights, your taste, your work ethic, your decision-making ability, your breadth and depth of knowledge, your unique experiences, their market value and market potential drop down rapidly to the absolute minimum. They don't matter in a world in which agents are smarter, more attuned to the market needs, more receptive, more capable in every single way we measure capability. Except for one thing, being human. The obvious question is, who makes the money deploying these agents on the problems, right? The chip makers, they're going to make hay, they're going to make merry, no matter how anyone else is doing. And all the scenarios that you can imagine, right? All the worst case scenarios. Obviously, the scenarios where AGI itself takes over the chip making, those are obviously some of the doom scenarios. But we're talking of the median, 70% of the 30% of the scenarios around the median, right? We're not talking of the extreme 20% scenarios on either of the ends. Right, so that's obviously, those are one big winners. Then the models designers and trainers, they too could make a ton of money, and I mean trillions of dollars, if closed source AI has an edge, right? If not, most AGI will be open source, running locally and on large server farms run by NVIDIA et al. OS models, especially Meta and Mistral et al., they're really throwing a spanner in the bits. For some time, some proprietary models might have the edge, right? Models that produce massively increasing or compounding breakthroughs and inventions and products, right? And then the team behind these, so you can imagine the scenario where, let's say, OpenAI, they got a model which is maybe a fraction of a percentage better than the competition, but that fraction could be compared to how we are. Just if you look at comparison, again, this is obviously not a like-to-like comparison. It's a pretty stupid comparison on one level, but it still might make meaningful sense on one level, right? Chimpanzees and humans, we share 97% of our DNA, right? I think it's more than that. So that tiny percent, and I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about this. The example he gave was that you just need something to be a fraction of a bit smarter than us for us to not even understand or comprehend what that entity is doing. You can imagine this alien race, which, again, if there is an intelligence scale which is meaningful, which we are going to get to, right? IQ is just not it, but let's imagine there is. And again, this gets into quantifying intelligence. That, again, these are discussions that we're going to have later. But if there's something which is a fraction of a point smarter than you, at the edge, at the margin, that might make all the differences, right? Because solving the hard problems, like, we solved almost everything, right? Now we're solving the hard problems, and those are the problems that we're not making huge breakthroughs with, right? But if you got something which can just, start eroding away and chipping away at those problems at the margins, now you've got something which could be a winner, and it could be $1 trillion, quadrillion-dollar winner. So that's what I mean, that if there's companies where some of their proprietary models have an edge, even if it's a slight edge, that might make all the difference. But I think that this would only be the case for a relatively short span of time, right? So yeah, sure, they could create all sorts of inventions, products, etc. But, and again, the team behind these models, which would be a very lean team, could reap the rewards. But you're going to see more and more of the trend where smaller and smaller teams and groups of people accrue greater and greater value from these models. People are going to cope, and I've had conversations about this with a few people, and they say that government regulation is going to prevent this. AIs are never going to get to that point where they can solve problems that humans can't. All of this is just cope, and it's ranked level of cope, right? It's just, how arrogant can we be to think that our level of intelligence is the highest level possible in the universe, right? And look at it this way. I mean, again, it's not a great example from many standpoints, but we're able to replicate human level of intelligence within 50 years. What nature took 3.5 billion years, we were able to do in 50 years. Now, some might say that it would have required human level. The fact that it was humans who created this intelligence tells you that the credit is due to humans rather than the fact that creating intelligence is easy, right? Because even if it's a challenging problem, the fact that humans were up to the task tells you that humans are pretty damn intelligent, right? My point is that the progress we are making and the way we are going, even if we stop all progress, we are on an upward trajectory where we are going to have AGI systems pretty soon. They might not be systems that might be human-like in terms of their emotive abilities, in terms of their modeling abilities, modeling humans and modeling the world, but they might be able to solve, for example, they might be able to produce unique breakthroughs and insights and products better than humans, right? And again, we don't have a set definition of AGI. Some people say that the point at which an AI system can do better quality of creative work compared to a human, that is where you say that's an AGI system. My thoughts are that I think that's a good definition. AGI is obviously there are certain things that matter a lot to us, and once an AI system gets better at most of these things compared to the top 0.01% human, I think that's when you say that we've got AGI in our midst. But yeah, I think this is all the cope, right? We are going to have these systems, and to these people, what I show is a picture of the precedents of the past, economic interests and growth interests and technology advancement interests have always won out, bar none. And there's nothing to indicate that this time is going to be any different, especially when the forces are magnitudes larger than all the previous ones combined. In all the scenarios, from the best to the worst, AGI does take over all roles, all thinking tasks, all breakthrough work, all product creation, even high quality and insightful writing and art, and all the things that have allowed humans, individuals, to accrue phenomenal levels of wealth in the past will be taken over by AGI, simply because there will be such a massive gulf between the quality. When I talk about the consolidation of the wealth classes, which is when I talk about my thesis in this space and the reasons for my desperation. So this is where we talk about my own personal thoughts. I strongly believe that we have reached the end of the line of this mega trend of strong correlations between the value one generates in the world and the wealth they generate as a result. AGI will remove, or rather blunt or nullify, any alpha or edge one would have required to increase their wealth substantially. If AGI provides genius to everyone, it also takes away genius level abilities from everyone. If AGI provides leverage to everyone, it also takes away leverage from everyone. These are things that most people don't pay attention to, because most people don't need to pay attention to this. Again, addressing a certain group, I'm addressing fears in my own mind more than anything else, also addressing a certain group, that we're going to look at the psychographics of this group later on. But for this group, this realization that the alpha that they had, it's not going to be an alpha for too long, that is a pretty serious realization. AI could be, well, it is bound to be, the most democratizing force. Not bound to be, it could do all sorts of tyrannical things, or could be used for tyrannical purposes, but it likely is going to be one of the most democratizing force in human history. At the same time, it could be the most ladder destroying force in human history, where it takes away the hope for one of the most potent pull forces in our world. The promise of greater optionality, greater freedom, greater control over our lives, the drive that could be the ultimate of our drives. Personally, I'm super concerned, for I desperately need to cross the chasm. Everything I want is on the other side of the valley, and I have less than a year to traverse this Olympian, gargantuan cliffside. Yes, I am operating with the assumption that AGI is imminent, and very much so, for it is the only rational option on the table. This is my version of the Pascal's wager. If I'm wrong, I will have only accelerated my growth and learning journeys. I'll have only tried more shots at goal than I otherwise would have, because I've got this sword dangling over me. I've got this bucket of lava dangling over me. If I'm right though, I get in just before the doors are about to be shut firmly and finally and irrevocably, and shut firm not just for me, but for all my future generations. If you ask me what my single greatest worry is, it is this, alongside the one of losing my loved ones. One of my internal dilemmas, one that has been stomping me like hell, is that the sooner we get to AGI, the sooner we have age extension and life enhancement technologies. But the sooner we get to AGI, the fewer chances I have of being in the position of crossing the chasm and being in the position to have access to these ultra expensive technologies is one great paradox, which brings me to my other great fear. One of my absolute greatest concerns is losing my parents. before age extension technologies become available or viable. Even if they do, it would reasonably need to be somewhere above hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to avail of these technologies. So one part of this is something I can't control, right? How fast we invent these technologies, how fast we deploy them. Though frankly, in the most outrageous scenarios, albeit those at the lowest odds, I can end up making meaningful differences, so say even a year, which might make all the difference at the end. Imagine a wealthy person who wanted to live a long life, dying a day before life extension tech went online. The gravity of this tragedy could not be grasped, could not be overstated. You're losing not just your life, but multiples of it, and those multiples having radically greater quality in them, by all metrics. No loss can be greater, and believe this. I do believe this deeply, and so I do what I must to prevent this. Part two of crossing this wealth threshold, where I can personally tap into these technologies and use them for my parents and loved ones, is, it's crossing the threshold, right? And this is obviously where it's all on me. If I fumble the ball, those deaths, those needless deaths, losing all those most cherished people in my life will be on me. The blood of my most precious people will be on my hands. Imagine the weight. Frankly, it is so incredible that I still haven't grasped it, which is partly why I lack that intensity and that desperation and that urgency. This peace, more than anything else, is a battle cry, a calm reminder that the stakes are as high as it can possibly be. And there's not going to be a better time to rise to the occasion, to ascend to meet the challenge than this moment I find myself in. The illusion and delusion of exploding startups with agents in everyone's pockets. We have a tendency to extrapolate the past and discount factors that can change our trajectory radically. Take startups. There are millions of startups in the world. But these millions of startups in the world, we think that with the sheer number of them around, startups are an institution that are going to stick around. And so are the outlier results, well, for some of them. And as the interest in them spikes with job losses, rapid job losses, and job dissolution, they're only going to get more popular. That is what people would think, and that's the narrative that has been going around in the tech world ever since AI became a popular thing in the tech world and the broader world. Let me just burst your bubble right here. For one thing, the number is a mere illusion, right? And this becomes very obvious once you start zooming in, once you start getting granular. Most startups, they're a copy of other startups, with minute changes or additions or differences. Most of them can be categorized in a few hundred, less than 100 categories, which further can be categorized upwards into some 10 to 20 categories. So what's the issue? The major problem is that, if you want to call it a problem, is that we live in a finite world with finite resources, with finite attention spans, with finite money. There are only so many things people can do, want to do, and have money to do. We're also quite limited in our cognition and our imagination. The kinds of products an advanced alien species might need, we simply wouldn't. You'd only build for what is in front of us, for who is in front of us. And with the way we are, there's only so much that can be built, and we've built most of that. And we're fast approaching that inverse singularity, a moment in time where all the major problems have solutions, and these solutions converge to the best possible solution for that problem. Say the best business suite, say the best social platform, say the best messaging platform, say the best sales platform, say the best matchmaking platform. As more and more of these problems become solved problems, there'll be fewer and fewer fruits to pick, to target for building a startup. And as for the funding, which again tends to be tends to lead people astray, it's all driven by greed. The returns have no correlation with the hype, the glamour, the whole shtick around the ecosystem. The returns are abysmal for most VC funds. So this is simply because there simply aren't enough great, innovative, boundary pushing, real value generating, breakthrough generating startups in the world for all the VC funds and investment funds and vehicles. As the average startup returns and median startup results inevitably flatline, the investment landscape will have no choice but to become wiser. The thing we have to remember is that Sam Altman and Satya Nadella and all the other prominent tech people and voices have a status quo to protect, worlds to build that would be more to their design. That requires seeding narratives around how everyone will be able to do startups with AI agents. But the more the models are used or sold based on promises of building generational wealth or above median wealth, the more the spending trickles up to their companies and shareholders. That's the name of the game. Sure, that bit about the sheer ease of doing startups with agents will mean many more people will be able to do startups. Is true. It's very true, right? It's just good. Well, yeah, it's true. But how profitable will even the top 0.0001% of startups will be when most low-hanging fruits have been picked right off? When AI agents are run by big companies, and these will act as startup studios to get to the rest. And then individuals will have no edge due to everyone having the fabled child of Alan Turing and Ada Lovelace in their pockets. The obvious problem this creates is that everyone, and again, you can say that this is a problem, or you can say it's a problem from certain perspectives. From other perspectives, this is more of an empowering thing. The obvious thing that this creates is that if everyone can produce anything and everything using these genius squared AGI agents, there is no edge in producing any value in a market which is structured like ours, where if such a thing were to eventualize, everything would become a commodity. As in, when I say such a thing, a product that does take off, does get people really excited. If it does get out in the world, it'll become a commodity, selling at commodity or dirt cheap prices without any alpha, which had been the secret all along. Take creating a super duper app. In the world of AI agents, even if you build one that blows everything else off the park, someone can copy yours in a day. And Eric Schmidt was talking about this, how people in a couple of years, he predicts this, people in a couple of years will be able to create a TikTok clone in a day. Yep. And there go all your unique insights and all your hard work. Sure, there can still be some modes, diminishing as they will be, such as distribution, the human element, etc. But these will become less relevant for more and more people, where in the world in which the Pareto principle itself will be charged on steroids. Wow. Apply the same example, but for games or entertainment stuff. People will be co-creating the entertainment, or your personal AIs will be creating your entertainment, your games, your apps for you. Again, removes the need to use someone else's creation, to pay someone else. To sum up and to reiterate, the problem area of actual problems that need to be solved to get to the model of the utopian world, the best of all best worlds, is also finite. There are only so many problems we need to solve: energy, transport, food, love, sex, parenting, relationships, joy, passion, pleasure, excitement, meaning, play, body, and a few more categories, almost exhaustively. A lot of these have been picked clean since they have been low-hanging fruits, and now it's mostly the big problems that need solving. So there's also a limit on the number of problems, affinity to it, and we're fast running up to its boundaries. As the area of remaining problems becomes smaller, so does the market opportunity. to use that as a springboard to build a meaningfully sized vehicle. And so there is a limit on the number of problems that need to be solved that can be solved. Affinity it is, and we are fast running up to its boundaries. As the area of remaining problems becomes smaller, so does the market opportunity to use it as a springboard to build a meaningfully sized vehicle of wealth generation. Death of dreams by 1,000 electronic cuts. All of this leads me to the inevitable bleak outlook. Well, for a portion of the population, for certain groups, again, not for the majority, they are going to do just fine. They're actually going to do better than just fine. Even if this world is one of abundance, and it likely will be for everyone, for those who are more ambitious, who want more out of life, this world will be pretty dismal. This lack of optionality, not being able to have your insights, your smarts, your personal attributes, experiences, be associated or coupled with commensurate market returns, or any market returns, can become harrowing for some people. Competition is the key word. How can we compete against 1,000 IQ entities whose base of knowledge is at least 10,000 times ours, whose processing speed which determines mental modeling, assumption testing, iterating, thought experimentation, etc., which is whose an intelligence, an entity which isn't riddled by biases, by blind spots, and all the human drama that humans are. Yeah, we won't be able to compete. No one will be. It's just the gulf will be greater than the gulf. It won't be in the same category, but purely from an intelligence scale standpoint, the gulf between us and these AHEI, ASI entities will be greater than the gulf between us and our living entities. Now, obviously, the fact that we can understand the same, we'll be able to hopefully understand the same language at least for a few decades. All of that puts us in a different category of different gulfs, but it's still going to be a greater gulf. Again, we touch on the scale of how do we determine how do we meaningfully quantify intelligence, right? So all of that's a separate discussion. The joy and pleasure and excitement and pride of changing the world, making it a better place, because of something that you brought to it, built for it, these will be relics of a past age. Those with the will still find a way to make the best of this very utopian world. And the promise and the potential of this world cannot be overstated either, to be fair. It will require, again, for this particular group, to detach the value creation potential and abilities, their own value creation potential and abilities, with the actual value they can generate in this world. No, monetary, financial value, I mean. I know this reads as a pessimistic take for some, that things that could happen that could render this prediction null and void, nothing would make me happier. In the meantime, just as we all choose what beliefs and models to live with, this is one that has been barnstorming in its desire to inhabit itself in my mind. And I think it's close to being lodged right in there, deep in there. I don't want to live in the land of wishful thinking, fanciful thinking, in lands of fantasy, and my models lead me to believe that this is the likeliest scenario, the scenario I've laid out for you. And believing this makes me more prepared, makes me want to be more prepared, makes me work with more urgency, more intensity. Despite all my momentary and emotional resistance to the idea, to this model, and yet at the end of the day, seeking and internalizing truths is what we want to do, what I want to do as a person, as a self, as an entity, so that we can use it as a weapon, a shield, a pen, a paper, a canvas, when we need to. What replaces this glorious symphony, which played out over the last 500 years and hyper-accelerated in the last 20, is for another conversation altogether, though we haven't hinted at certain possible futures and scenarios in this very conversation. In passing, I'll leave you with this mental image. The final train is about to bolt from the station. The last ship is about to sail for the new world. and we are racing against time to make it to the ports. With that, I thank you for your time, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.